Victoria Sterling's Louboutin. Heels clicked against the marble floor of the executive level like a metronome counting down to someone's doom. The quarterly board meeting had been brutal. 3 hours of hostile questions about declining profits and missed projections. She needed something, anything, to remind herself why she belonged in the corner office of Sterling Dynamics. "Ma'am, the Yamamoto contract is ready for your review," Bradley Whitman said, falling into step beside her. Her executive assistant had been with the company for 5 years, climbing from junior analyst to her right hand through sheer ambition and an uncanny ability to anticipate her needs. "Not now, Bradley," Victoria snapped, her jaw tight with frustration. "I need 5 minutes to think without someone shoving papers in my face." They passed the executive break room where a maintenance worker was replacing the water cooler bottles. The man was in his early 40s, wearing the standard gray uniform of the cleaning staff. His movements were efficient, methodical, but there was something about his posture straight-backed, alert, that seemed oddly out of place for someone in his position. Bradley noticed Victoria's gaze and smirked. "That's Marcus Sullivan. Been here about 6 months. Quiet type. Never causes any trouble." Victoria barely registered the name. Her attention was drawn to the massive Mosler safe built into the wall behind the man, a relic from her grandfather's era when Sterling Dynamics dealt in physical commodities rather than digital assets. The thing was a monument to paranoia, with its thick steel walls and complex mechanical lock system that hadn't been opened in over a decade. "You know," Bradley said, his voice taking on that conspiratorial tone he used when he was about to suggest something entertaining, "I bet our friend Marcus there has never seen $200 million in his entire life." Victoria's eyebrow arched. The safe did indeed contain exactly that amount, bearer bonds and rare metal certificates that her grandfather had insisted on keeping as insurance against digital catastrophe. It was old-fashioned, excessive, and completely unnecessary in the modern world. "What are you getting at, Bradley?" "Just thinking out loud," he said with a shrug. "I mean, look at him. Probably makes $30,000 a year. Lives paycheck to paycheck. The combination to that safe might as well be written in ancient Sanskrit for all the good it would do him." Marcus continued his work, seemingly oblivious to their conversation. But Victoria caught something, the slightest pause in his movements, as if he was listening. An idea formed in Victoria's mind. A cruel idea, perhaps. But after the morning she'd had, she was in the mood for a little entertainment at someone else's expense. "Marcus," she called out. The man looked up, his expression neutral but alert. His eyes were gray, she noticed, and there was something unsettling about their steadiness. "Yes, ma'am? See that safe behind you?" Victoria gestured with a perfectly manicured finger. "There's $200 million inside it." Marcus glanced at the imposing steel structure, then back at her. "Yes, ma'am." Bradley stepped forward, barely containing his amusement. "Here's the thing, Marcus. That safe hasn't been opened in years. The combination is, well, let's just say it's complicated. But I'll make you a deal." He paused for dramatic effect. "If you can open that safe, Miss Sterling here will give you everything inside it." Victoria's eyes widened. That wasn't what she'd had in mind. But Bradley's audacity was impressive. "Bradley, I don't think—" "Come on, Victoria," Bradley interrupted, his voice smooth as silk. "What's the harm? It's impossible. The combination is a 12-digit sequence based on a mathematical formula that only 3 people in the world know. And even if he somehow guessed it, think of the publicity. Sterling Dynamics CEO honors impossible bet. The board would love the human interest angle." Marcus set down his cleaning supplies and turned to face them fully. For a moment, Victoria thought she saw something flicker in his eyes, not confusion or intimidation, but calculation. "You're serious?" Marcus asked, his voice quiet but steady. "Dead serious," Bradley said, crossing his arms. $200 million. All yours, if you can open it." Victoria found herself nodding, caught up in Bradley's confidence. "Why not? It's impossible anyway." Marcus walked over to the safe, his movements deliberate and unhurried. He stood before the massive steel door, studying the complex dial mechanism. The lock was a masterpiece of 1,950 seconds engineering multiple dials, each requiring precise positioning, with a final electronic component that had been added in the 1,990 seconds. "This is a Mosler Double Guard Supreme," Marcus said quietly, running his fingers along the steel surface. 12-digit combination. Dual redundancy system. Electronic verification on the final sequence. Victoria and Bradley exchanged glances. How did a janitor know the technical specifications of a high-security safe? Marcus knelt down, pressing his ear to the steel door. His fingers found the first dial, and he began to turn it slowly, listening. The room fell silent, except for the soft clicking of the mechanism. "What's he doing?" Victoria whispered. "Playing pretend," Bradley whispered back. But his voice had lost some of its confidence. Marcus's movements were precise, methodical. He worked through the first dial, then the second, his ear pressed against the steel, listening to sounds that Victoria couldn't even hear. There was something almost surgical about his concentration. The third dial. The fourth. Each movement deliberate. Each pause calculated. "This is ridiculous," Bradley muttered, but he was watching intently now, his amusement replaced by something that looked suspiciously like concern. Marcus reached the final mechanical dial, then moved to the electronic keypad. His fingers hovered over the numbers for a moment, then began to input a sequence. The small LED display flickered from red to amber. "He's actually," Victoria started to say, but her words were cut off by a sound she hadn't heard in over a decade. The deep mechanical thunk of heavy steel bolts retracting. The safe door swung open with a whisper of perfectly balanced hinges, revealing neat stacks of bearer bonds, certificates, and documents worth exactly $200 million. The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus stood up, brushing dust from his knees, and turned to face Victoria and Bradley. His expression was calm, almost apologetic. "I believe you said everything inside was mine," he said quietly. Victoria stared at him, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. A janitor, a man who cleaned toilets and emptied trash cans, had just cracked a safe that had stumped security experts for years. "How?" she whispered. Marcus picked up his cleaning supplies, his movements as unhurried as before. "Lucky guess," he said, but there was something in his eyes now, a depth that hadn't been there before. Or perhaps that she simply hadn't bothered to notice. He walked toward the door, then paused. "I'll be back tomorrow to finish the water coolers," he said. "Have a good day, Miss Sterling." And then he was gone, leaving Victoria and Bradley staring at an empty safe and a world that suddenly made no sense at all. Victoria Sterling stood frozen in front of the empty safe for a full 30 seconds, her mind refusing to process what had just happened. The neat stacks of bearer bonds, the rare metal certificates, the emergency cash reserves, all of it gone, walked out the door by a man in a gray janitor's uniform. "Bradley," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tell me, you have an explanation for what just happened." Bradley Whitman's face had gone pale, his usual confident smirk replaced by something approaching panic. There's no way he could have known that combination. It's mathematically impossible." "Impossible?" Victoria's voice rose an octave. "He just walked out of here with $200 million of company assets. Impossible doesn't seem to be in Marcus Sullivan's vocabulary." She spun around, her heels clicking frantically as she paced. "Get security. Get them now. We need to basses." "Miss Sterling?" Bradley's voice was strange, distant. He was staring at his phone, his face now completely white. "What now?" "We have a bigger problem." He held up his phone, showing an email marked urgent. "The Morrison deal just collapsed. They're pulling out completely. Effective immediately." Victoria felt the blood drain from her face. The Morrison Industries contract was worth $800 million over 5 years, the cornerstone of Sterling Dynamics' expansion into the manufacturing sector. Without it, the company would miss its quarterly projections by a devastating margin. "That's impossible," she said. But even as the words left her mouth, she realized she'd been saying that a lot lately. "You said it was locked down. You said Morrison was eager to sign." Bradley's fingers flew across his phone screen. "I'm calling Robert Morrison right now. There has to be some mistake." Victoria watched him dial, her mind racing. First the safe, now this. The timing was too convenient, too perfectly catastrophic. She thought about the board meeting that morning, the hostile questions, the barely concealed votes of no confidence. If word got out about both disasters. "Mr. Morrison?" Bradley's voice was strained as he spoke into the phone. "Yes. This is Bradley Whitman from Sterling Dynamics. I just received your email, and I'm hoping we can discuss." His face fell. "I see." Yes, I understand. Thank you. He hung up, his hand trembling slightly. Well, Victoria demanded, they say our security protocols are inadequate, that they can't trust a company that allows unauthorized access to sensitive areas. Bradley's voice was hollow. Someone sent them security footage from this morning. Footage of a maintenance worker accessing executive areas without proper clearance. Victoria's blood turned to ice. The safe. They think we're either incompetent or running some kind of elaborate scam. Either way, they want nothing to do with us. The implications hit Victoria like a physical blow. The board would convene an emergency session within hours. Her position as CEO, already precarious after months of declining performance, would be in immediate jeopardy. Her father's company, the empire he'd built from nothing, would be at risk. We need to find Marcus Sullivan, she said, her voice hard as steel. Now. Ma'am, with respect, chasing after a janitor isn't going to fix the Morrison situation. Victoria turned on him, her eyes blazing. That janitor just demonstrated skills that shouldn't exist. He opened a safe that 3 security experts told me was impregnable. And now, mysteriously, our biggest deal falls apart because of security concerns right after someone filmed him in our executive area? She stepped closer to Bradley, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Either Marcus Sullivan is the luckiest man alive, or there's something we don't know about him. Something important. Bradley nodded reluctantly. I'll have HR pull his file. Do it. And Bradley, I want everything. Employment history, references, background check, social security records, everything. 20 minutes later, Victoria stared at Marcus Sullivan's personnel file with growing frustration. It was almost aggressively ordinary. Previous employment listed as freelance maintenance and repair. No references, no criminal background, no military service, no higher education. He'd appeared 6 months ago like a ghost, passed a basic background check, and had been invisible ever since. This tells us nothing, she muttered. Maybe there's nothing to tell, Bradley suggested. Maybe he really did just get lucky with the safe. Victoria's phone buzzed. A text from her assistant. Board meeting called for 4 p.m. emergency session. Chairman wants to discuss recent security breaches and leadership decisions. She had 3 hours. I need to talk to him, Victoria said, grabbing her coat. Face to face. Miss Sterling, you can't just show up at a janitor's apartment. It's beneath your position. My position is about to be beneath someone else if I don't figure this out. She paused at the door. Find out where he lives. And Bradley, start working on damage control for Morrison. See if there's any way to salvage this. An hour later, Victoria stood outside a modest apartment building in a working-class neighborhood she'd never had reason to visit. The contrast to her penthouse was jarring cracked sidewalks instead of marble floors, chain-link fences instead of manicured gardens. She climbed to the 3rd floor and knocked on apartment 3B. The door opened, and Marcus Sullivan stood there in jeans and a simple gray t-shirt. Behind him, she could see a small, neat apartment and hear the sound of a child's laughter. Miss Sterling, he said, his voice calm but unsurprised. I was wondering when you'd show up. We need to talk. Marcus glanced back into the apartment, then stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind him. About what? About who you really are. Victoria studied his face, looking for any crack in his composure. Janitors don't crack Mosler safes, Marcus. They don't know technical specifications of security systems. They don't move like you move. I move like someone who cleans floors for a living. No, Victoria said firmly. You move like someone who's been trained. Military? Intelligence? Corporate espionage? For just a moment, something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Pain, maybe. Or recognition. I'm a single father who needs a steady paycheck, he said quietly. Nothing more. The Morrison deal collapsed today, Victoria said, watching his reaction carefully. Right after they received footage of you in our executive area. Coincidence? Marcus's expression didn't change, but she caught something, a slight tightening around his eyes. I'm sorry to hear that, he said. Are you? Victoria stepped closer. Because I'm starting to think there are no coincidences where you're concerned. The apartment door opened, and a young girl peered out. She was maybe 8 years old, with Marcus's gray eyes and a bright, curious expression. Daddy? Is everything okay? Marcus's entire demeanor shifted, the careful neutrality replaced by gentle warmth. Everything's fine, sweetheart. Go back inside. I'll be there in a minute. The girl looked at Victoria with frank curiosity. Are you the lady from Daddy's work? Something like that, Victoria said softly. Daddy says you're very important. He says important people have to make hard choices. Marcus's jaw tightened. Emma. Inside. Now. The girl disappeared back into the apartment, but her words hung in the air. Victoria stared at Marcus, pieces of a puzzle she couldn't quite see starting to form in her mind. She's why you took the job, Victoria said suddenly. The steady paycheck, the health insurance. You're not hiding from something, you're protecting someone. Marcus's mask slipped for just a second, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. Miss Sterling, he said, his voice carefully controlled. I think you should go. The money from the safe, Victoria pressed. You could disappear with it. Start over somewhere else. But you won't, will you? Because running would mean taking her away from her school, her friends, her life. Marcus's hands clenched into fists at his sides. You don't know anything about my life. I know you're trapped, Victoria said. Just like I am. The board is meeting in 2 hours to discuss my removal as CEO. My father's company is about to be torn apart, and I can't stop it. But you have skills I need. Skills that could save both of us. I clean floors, Miss Sterling. That's all I do. Victoria pulled out her phone and showed him a news article. Morrison Industries just announced they're considering a partnership with Blackstone Corp instead. My biggest competitor. The same company that's been trying to acquire Sterling Dynamics for the past 2 years. She watched Marcus read, saw the moment when understanding dawned in his eyes. Someone's playing a very sophisticated game, she continued. Someone with access to our security systems, our client communications, our internal operations. Someone who knew exactly how to make me look incompetent and vulnerable. Marcus handed back her phone, his expression unreadable. And you think I'm involved? I think you're the only person who might be able to help me figure out who is. Victoria took a deep breath. I'm offering you a deal, Marcus. Help me save my company, and I'll make sure Emma never has to worry about health insurance, college tuition, or anything else ever again. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, conflict playing across his features. You have no idea what you're asking, he said finally. I'm asking you to be who you really are, Victoria replied. Just for one day. From inside the apartment came the sound of Emma calling for her father. Marcus closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, Victoria saw her answer. One day, he said quietly, and then we're done. 2 hours later, Marcus Sullivan sat in the passenger seat of Victoria's Tesla Model S, watching the city blur past through tinted windows. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black jacket, still simple clothes, but somehow they transformed him. Gone was the invisible janitor. In his place sat a man who belonged in expensive cars and dangerous situations. Tell me about Morrison Industries, Marcus said, his voice all business now. Victoria glanced at him as she navigated through downtown traffic. Family-owned manufacturing empire. 3rd generation. Robert Morrison is old school. Values, loyalty, and tradition above everything else. His grandfather started the company with a handshake, and your word is your bond philosophy. And someone convinced him you can't be trusted. Someone who knew exactly which buttons to push. Victoria's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The security footage they received wasn't just random surveillance. It was edited, packaged, and delivered with a narrative. Professional work. Marcus pulled out a tablet, not the company-issued device he'd been given as a janitor, but a sleek, military-grade unit that had appeared from somewhere in his apartment. His fingers moved across the screen with practiced efficiency. I need access to your company's network, he said. From here? That's impossible. Our security protocols are designed to keep out amateurs. Marcus's fingers never stopped moving. Your network has 17 different access points, including 3 that your IT department doesn't know about. Bradley's been busy. Victoria nearly swerved into the next lane. How do you know about Bradley's access points? Because I've been watching him for 3 months. The words hung in the air like a confession. Victoria pulled over to the curb, her heart hammering. What did you just say? Marcus looked up from the tablet, his gray eyes steady and unreadable. You asked who I really am. I'm someone who was hired to investigate corporate espionage at Sterling Dynamics. The safe this morning? That wasn't luck. That was a field test. Hired by who? Your father. Victoria felt the world tilt sideways. My father's been dead for 2 years. Your father hired me 3 years ago, Marcus said quietly. He suspected someone inside the company was feeding information to competitors. He wanted proof before he acted. When he died, the investigation went dormant. But I stayed, kept watching, kept waiting. You're lying. But even as she said it, Victoria knew he wasn't. The pieces were falling into place the way Marcus moved. His knowledge of the building's systems, his uncanny ability to be invisible while seeing everything. Your father was a careful man, Marcus continued. He built safeguards into the company that even you don't know about. Hidden accounts, backup protocols, emergency measures. He knew someone would eventually try to destroy what he'd built. Victoria stared at him, her mind reeling. What kind of investigator opens safes and cleans floors? The kind who used to work for the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Division. Marcus's voice was flat, professional, specialized in corporate infiltration and white-collar investigations. I spent 8 years taking down executives who thought they were untouchable. Used to work? Something dark flickered across Marcus's features. My wife was killed in a car accident 2 years ago. Brake failure on a mountain road. Very convenient timing. She'd just uncovered evidence of a major embezzlement scheme at her accounting firm. He paused, his jaw tight. The official investigation found no evidence of foul play. I disagreed. Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. You think she was murdered? I know she was murdered. But knowing and proving are different things. After the funeral, I realized Emma needed a father more than the world needed another dead federal agent. So, I disappeared. Took a job where the only thing at stake was clean floors. Until my father found you. Your father was persistent. He offered me something I couldn't refuse, a chance to use my skills without putting Emma at risk. A quiet investigation. No danger. Just watching and waiting. Victoria's phone buzzed. A text from her assistant. Board meeting moved up to 3 p.m. They're voting on your removal. You have 45 minutes. We're out of time, she said, showing Marcus the message. No, Marcus said, his fingers flying across the tablet again. We're exactly where we need to be. Bradley's been sloppy today, overconfident. He's left digital fingerprints all over the Morrison sabotage. The tablet screen filled with data, email headers, network logs, financial transactions. To Victoria, it looked like gibberish, but Marcus read it like a roadmap. Here, he said, pointing to a series of timestamps. Bradley accessed the Morrison contract files at 2:47 a.m. last night. Then he logged into a VPN server registered to a shell company in Delaware. From there, he accessed Blackstone Corp's secure messaging system. He was feeding them information. More than that, he was coordinating the entire takedown. Look at this. Marcus pulled up another screen showing financial records. 3 days ago, Bradley received a wire transfer for $50,000 from an account linked to Blackstone. Payment for services rendered. Victoria felt sick. He's been selling us out. For months. Maybe longer. Your father suspected, but he died before he could prove it. Marcus looked up from the tablet. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Victoria's phone rang. Bradley's name appeared on the screen. Answer it, Marcus said. Act normal. We need him to think he's won. Victoria took a deep breath and accepted the call. Bradley, please tell me you have good news. I'm afraid not. Bradley's voice was smooth, sympathetic. Morrison is refusing to take my calls. The board is furious. Victoria, I think you need to prepare for the worst. What do you mean? They're going to ask for your resignation. I've been trying to defend you, but the evidence is overwhelming. The safe incident, the Morrison debacle, it looks like a pattern of poor judgment. Victoria met Marcus's eyes. He nodded encouragingly. You're right, she said, injecting defeat into her voice. Maybe it's time to step down. For the good of the company. I'm sorry, Victoria, I really am. But perhaps this is for the best. The company needs stable leadership. I suppose you're right. I'll draft my resignation letter. Actually, Bradley said, and Victoria could hear the satisfaction creeping into his voice. I've taken the liberty of preparing something. Just to save you the trouble. I'll have it ready for the board meeting. The call ended. Victoria stared at her phone, fury building in her chest. He's already written my resignation letter, she said. Of course he has. He's been planning this for months. Marcus saved the data to a secure drive. But he made one critical mistake. What's that? He assumed you'd go quietly. Marcus looked up, and for the first time since she'd met him, Victoria saw a predator's smile. Your father didn't just hire me to investigate, Victoria. He hired me to protect what he'd built, and that includes protecting you. Victoria felt something shift inside her, the helpless panic of the morning, replaced by cold, focused anger. What do? We go to that board meeting, Marcus said, pocketing the tablet, and we give Bradley exactly what he deserves. The evidence you found, will it hold up? In court? Absolutely. But we're not going to court. Marcus's smile turned dangerous. We're going to do something much more satisfying. We're going to destroy him in front of the people he's been manipulating. Victoria started the car, her hands steady now. How? Your father built more than safeguards into the company, Marcus said. He built traps. Hidden protocols that activate when the company is under attack. Bradley's about to discover that stealing from Sterling Dynamics comes with consequences he never imagined. As they pulled back into traffic, heading toward the Sterling Dynamics tower, Victoria felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. For the first time in months, she wasn't fighting alone. She had an ally, a dangerous, skilled ally who'd been watching and waiting for exactly this moment. Marcus, she said as they approached the building. Yeah? Thank you. For staying. For watching over the company even after my father died. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Your father saved my life when I thought it was over. Gave me purpose when I had none. The least I could do was honor his trust. And now we finish what he started. The Sterling Dynamics boardroom felt like a courtroom as Victoria walked through the heavy oak doors. 12 board members sat around the polished mahogany table, their faces grave and uncomfortable. At the head of the table, Chairman Harold Blackwood, her father's oldest friend, avoided her eyes. Bradley Whitman stood near the presentation screen, a stack of documents in his hands and victory written across his face. He'd changed into his best suit, Victoria noticed, dressed for his coronation. Victoria, Harold said, his voice heavy with reluctance. Please, sit down. I'll stand. Thank you. Victoria remained by the door, her posture straight and defiant. She could feel the weight of 12 pairs of eyes on her, measuring her, judging her fitness to lead. Very well. Harold cleared his throat. We've called this emergency session to address the serious security breaches and questionable decisions that have occurred under your leadership. Bradley has prepared a comprehensive report. Bradley stepped forward, his expression a perfect mask of professional concern. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to show you pains me deeply. Victoria Sterling has been like a sister to me, but my loyalty must be to this company and its shareholders. He clicked a remote, and the wall screen came alive with security footage from that morning. There was Marcus in his janitor's uniform, accessing the executive break room. There was the safe opening. There was Marcus walking away with $200 million. This morning, Miss Sterling made an unauthorized wager with a maintenance worker, Bradley said, his voice dripping with false regret. She allowed an unvetted employee to access our most secure assets. The result? A catastrophic security breach that cost us not only $200 million in liquid assets, but also our largest client contract. Murmurs rippled around the table. Victoria saw doubt and disappointment in every face. Furthermore, Bradley continued, this incident appears to be part of a pattern of increasingly erratic behavior. Missed meetings, poor judgment calls, and a general inability to maintain the professional standards this company requires. He placed a document on the table in front of Harold. I've taken the liberty of drafting a resignation letter that would allow Miss Sterling to step down gracefully, preserving both her dignity and the company's reputation. Victoria watched the performance with growing admiration for Bradley's skill. He was masterful, every word calculated, every gesture designed to paint her as unstable, while positioning himself as the reluctant savior. The board has already discussed potential interim leadership, Harold said quietly. Bradley has graciously agreed to step in as acting CEO while we conduct a proper search for permanent replacement. How convenient, Victoria said, speaking for the first time since entering the room. Bradley's eyes flicked to her, a flash of irritation breaking through his concerned facade. Victoria, I know this is difficult, but… Difficult? Victoria stepped forward, her voice cutting through his practiced sympathy. What's difficult, Bradley, is discovering that my most trusted advisor has been systematically destroying my company from the inside. The room fell silent. Bradley's face went pale, but he recovered quickly. I understand you're upset, he said smoothly, but making wild accusations won't change the facts. You made a serious error in judgment, and now you're looking for someone else to blame. Am I? Victoria pulled out her phone and connected it to the room's presentation system. Then perhaps you can explain this. The screen filled with financial records, wire transfers, account numbers, timestamps. Bradley's confident expression began to crack. These are records of payments from Blackstone Corporation to a shell company registered in your name, Victoria said, her voice steady and cold. $50,000 3 days ago, $25,000 last month, $15,000 the month before that. Bradley's face had gone white. Those records are fabricated. This is a desperate attempt to what? Frame you? Victoria clicked to the next screen. Here are the email headers from your communications with Blackstone executives. Here are the network logs showing you accessing confidential client files at 2:47 a.m. And here, she clicked again. Here is the edited security footage you sent to Morrison Industries, complete with metadata showing it was processed on your personal laptop. The boardroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Harold Blackwood stared at the screen, his face a mask of disbelief and growing anger. This is impossible, Bradley stammered. How could you have… He stopped, realization dawning in his eyes. The janitor, he's some kind of hacker. You brought in a criminal to fabricate evidence against me. Actually, said a calm voice from the doorway, I'm a federal agent. Every head turned as Marcus Sullivan walked into the boardroom. Gone was any trace of the humble janitor. He moved with quiet authority, his gray eyes scanning the room like a predator assessing threats. Special Agent Marcus Sullivan, Treasury Department, Financial Crimes Division, he said, producing a badge and credentials. I've been conducting an undercover investigation into corporate espionage at Sterling Dynamics for the past 6 months. Bradley's face went from white to green. That's impossible. You're a janitor. I hired you myself. You hired the identity I created, Marcus said calmly. Marcus Sullivan, maintenance worker, exists only on paper. The real Marcus Sullivan has been building a case against you since your first contact with Blackstone Corporation. He placed a tablet on the conference table, and the screen filled with a comprehensive dossier: photographs, financial records, recorded phone calls, email transcripts. Bradley Whitman has been selling confidential Sterling Dynamics information to competitors for 8 months, Marcus continued. He's received over $200,000 in payments, caused the loss of 3 major contracts, and attempted to orchestrate a hostile takeover by systematically undermining company leadership. Harold Blackwood's face was thunderous. Bradley, is this true? Bradley looked around the room desperately, seeing no friendly faces, no escape routes. His carefully constructed world was collapsing in real time. You don't understand, he said, his voice cracking. This company was dying under her leadership. I was trying to save it. Blackstone offered stability, growth, a real future. By destroying everything my father built, Victoria's voice was ice-cold fury. By betraying everyone who trusted you? Your father was a relic, Bradley snapped, his composure finally shattering completely. This company needed modern leadership, not some princess playing CEO because daddy left her a crown. The room fell silent. Even Bradley seemed to realize he'd gone too far. Harold Blackwood stood slowly, his face carved from stone. Security, he said into the intercom. Now, Harold, you have to understand, Bradley started. What I understand, Harold said, his voice carrying the weight of 40 years in corporate leadership, is that you've betrayed not just this company, but the memory of the finest man I ever knew. James Sterling trusted you. We all trusted you. 2 security guards entered the room. Harold nodded toward Bradley. Escort Mr. Whitman from the building. He's no longer employed here. As the guards moved toward him, Bradley's mask of professionalism finally cracked completely. This isn't over, he shouted, pointing at Victoria. You think you've won? You have no idea what's coming. Blackstone won't just walk away from this. They'll destroy you. And when they do, you'll wish you'd taken my deal. The guards escorted him out, his threats echoing down the hallway until the heavy doors closed with a final, decisive thud. The boardroom sat in stunned silence. Victoria looked around the table at faces that had been hostile an hour ago, and were now filled with shame and regret. "Victoria," Harold said quietly, "on behalf of this board, I offer our deepest apologies. We should have trusted you. We should have seen what was happening." Victoria nodded, accepting the apology but not quite ready to forgive. "The question now is what we do next." Bradley was right about one thing. Blackstone won't just walk away. They've invested too much in acquiring us to give up now. Marcus stepped forward. "Actually, they already have." Every eye turned to him. He smiled a cold, satisfied expression. "While you were dealing with Bradley, I was dealing with Blackstone. Turns out, corporate espionage is a federal crime. The FBI is executing search warrants at their headquarters as we speak. Their stock price has already dropped 30%, and their CEO is about to have a very bad day." Victoria stared at him. "You coordinated a federal raid?" "Your father didn't just hire me to investigate," Marcus said. "He hired me to protect what he built. That includes making sure anyone who tries to destroy it faces the full consequences of their actions." Harold Blackwood looked from Victoria to Marcus, understanding dawning in his eyes. James planned this. Even from the grave, he was protecting his company. He was protecting his daughter, Marcus corrected quietly. The company was just the means. Victoria felt tears threatening for the first time that day. Her father, even in death, had been watching over her, preparing for threats she couldn't see. "So what happens now?" she asked. Marcus's expression softened slightly. "Now you do what your father always believed you could do. You lead." 3 weeks later, Victoria Sterling stood in her father's old office, a room she'd avoided since his death, unable to face the memories it contained. Now, surrounded by his books and photographs, she felt his presence not as a weight of expectation, but as a source of strength. The company had not just survived Bradley's betrayal, it had emerged stronger. The Morrison deal had been salvaged when Robert Morrison himself called to apologize, having learned the truth about the sabotage. 2 other major contracts had followed, as word spread that Sterling Dynamics was under new, decisive leadership. But the real transformation wasn't in the boardroom, it was in the building itself. Victoria had implemented what she called the Hidden Talent Initiative, a company-wide program to identify and develop the skills of every employee, regardless of their current position. The mailroom clerk, who spoke 4 languages, was now heading international communications. The security guard with an engineering degree was designing new safety protocols. The cleaning lady with a master's in computer science was revolutionizing their IT infrastructure. "Miss Sterling?" Her new assistant, Jennifer, poked her head through the door. "Mr. Sullivan is here for your meeting." Victoria smiled. "Send him in." Marcus entered, but he looked different now. Gone was the gray janitor's uniform, replaced by a well-tailored suit that somehow made him seem both more professional and more approachable. He'd accepted her offer to head the new Corporate Security and Intelligence Division, a role that let him use his federal training to protect the company while staying close to Emma. "How's the Morrison integration going?" Victoria asked, gesturing for him to sit. "Smooth as silk. Robert Morrison wants to meet you in person next week. Says he's impressed by a CEO who fights for her people." Marcus settled into the chair across from her desk. "Speaking of fighting for people, I have some news about Bradley." Victoria's expression hardened slightly. "What about him?" "Federal prosecutors are offering him a plea deal. 5 years minimum security in exchange for full cooperation in the Blackstone investigation. His testimony could bring down their entire executive team. And if he doesn't take it, 25 to life for corporate espionage, wire fraud, and conspiracy. His lawyers are advising him to take the deal." Victoria nodded, feeling a complex mix of satisfaction and sadness. Bradley had been brilliant, ambitious, and ultimately self-destructive. In another world, he might have been a valuable ally instead of a dangerous enemy. "There's something else," Marcus said, his tone shifting. "Emma's been asking about you." Victoria's expression softened. Over the past 3 weeks, she'd gotten to know Marcus's daughter, a bright, curious 8-year-old, who seemed fascinated by the idea of a woman running a big company. Emma had started visiting the office after school, doing homework in the break room while her father worked. "What about me? She wants to know if you're going to marry her daddy." Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Marcus, I told her that grown-ups don't get married just because an 8-year-old thinks it's a good idea," Marcus said. But there was something in his eyes, a warmth that hadn't been there when they first met. "But she made a good point." "Which was?" "She said you make me smile. Really smile. For the first time since her mother died." Marcus leaned forward slightly. "She's not wrong." Victoria felt her heart skip a beat. Over the past weeks, their professional relationship had evolved into something deeper, long conversations that had nothing to do with business, shared meals in her office, moments of connection that felt both natural and terrifying. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I need you to know something. When I offered you that job, when I asked for your help, it wasn't because I was attracted to you. It was because I needed you. I know, but now," she took a breath, "now, I don't need you anymore. The company is stable, Bradley's gone, the threats are neutralized. You could leave tomorrow and we'd be fine." Marcus studied her face. "Is that what you want? For me to leave?" "No," Victoria said, the word coming out more forcefully than she'd intended. "No, I don't want you to leave. But I need you to stay because you want to, not because you feel obligated." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, the real smile Emma had talked about, the one that transformed his entire face. "Victoria," he said, 3 months ago, I was a broken man hiding from the world, pushing a mop and counting down the days until Emma graduated, and I could disappear completely. You didn't just give me a job, you gave me back my purpose. You reminded me that I could be more than my grief." He stood up and walked around the desk, stopping in front of her chair. "I'm not staying because I feel obligated," he said, reaching out to take her hand. "I'm staying because somewhere between that first day with the safe and right now, I fell in love with a woman who fights for what she believes in, who sees potential in everyone around her, and who makes me want to be the man I used to be." Victoria felt tears welling in her eyes. "Even though I'm your boss?" "Especially because you're my boss," Marcus said with a grin. "Emma's going to be insufferable when she finds out she was right." Victoria laughed, a sound of pure joy that echoed through the office. "So, what do we do now?" "Now," Marcus said, pulling her to her feet, "we do what your father always believed you could do. We build something better than what came before." He leaned down and kissed her, soft and gentle and full of promise. When they broke apart, Victoria saw her future reflected in his gray eyes, not the lonely, driven existence she'd been living, but something richer, warmer, more complete. "There's just one thing," she said, smiling up at him. "What's that?" "We're going to have to tell Emma she was right. She'll never let us live it down." Marcus laughed, the sound filling the office with warmth. "I think I can live with that." Outside the office windows, the city sprawled beneath them, full of possibilities and new beginnings. Sterling Dynamics hummed with productive energy, its employees working not just for paychecks but for a company that valued their potential. And in her father's old office, Victoria Sterling finally understood what he'd been trying to teach her all along, that true strength wasn't about standing alone at the top, but about building something worth protecting, and finding people worth protecting it with. The safe in the executive break room had been repaired and restocked. Its combination changed to a new sequence that only Victoria and Marcus knew. But it no longer represented hidden wealth or corporate paranoia. Now it was a reminder that the most valuable things in life, trust, love, loyalty, couldn't be locked away or stolen. They could only be earned, one day at a time, by people brave enough to see past the surface and discover the hidden treasures that lay beneath. As Marcus held her close, Victoria smiled, thinking of her father's words from years ago. "The best leaders don't just build companies, sweetheart. They build families." She'd finally learned what he meant. 6 months later, Emma Sullivan Sterling would serve as flower girl at her father's wedding, proudly telling anyone who would listen that she'd known they were perfect for each other from the very beginning. The wedding reception was held in the Sterling Dynamics employee cafeteria, because, as Victoria said in her speech, "This company isn't just where we work, it's where we found each other, and where we learned that the most important treasures are the ones we discover in the people around us." The safe remained in the executive break room, but its contents had changed. Instead of bearer bonds and certificates, it now held something far more valuable. Letters from employees whose lives had been transformed by the Hidden Talent Initiative, photos from company events where janitors danced with executives, and a single framed picture of James Sterling with a note in his handwriting. For Victoria, the greatest treasure I ever found was watching you become the leader I always knew you could be.